Hello and welcome to the Chicago Tribune's Bear Download. I'm Rich Campbell. This is Dan Wiederer. We're here at Hallis Hall at the conclusion of a long draft weekend. Saturday night, the Bears have 8 new players. Dan, what are your impressions of what they were able to accomplish on day 3?
Yeah, I think they came in with a plan, and Phil Emery said after the draft concluded that things went according to plan throughout the entire weekend, not just on Saturday, but on Friday and Thursday as well. And I think as you came into the last day of the draft, they knew some of their needs. They knew they were looking for a backup running back. They knew they wanted to get a safety, and they knew that they wanted to get those players in round 4. So it took a trade. They took Kadeem Carey with their first pick in the 4th round, the running back out of Arizona, and then traded with the Broncos to make sure they got a safety that they wanted in Brock Vereen from Minnesota. And that 1-2 punch and that ability to sort of play their draft board, I think, was critical in getting 2 guys that should help on both sides of the ball. Carey, a very productive runner in college, and Vereen, a guy with some versatility as a safety who's played some corner and brings some good football awareness to the table when he checks in later this week.
Yeah, and Phil Emery said that the Bears came into today, even before the draft started at noon Eastern time, that they wanted to make a trade back into the 4th round because of the way they had the running backs and safeties rated. They had to get back into that 4th round in order to get the quality player they needed for such a need, and they were able to do that. Of course, they had to back out of the 5th round. They go all the way to the 6th, where they draft quarterback David Fales. It's an interesting selection because on May 1st, Phil Emery said that he doesn't really look for developmental late-round quarterbacks with the intent to eventually make them into a starter, but it seems like the way that the value shook down, they were able to get Fales as a backup prospect. Phil Emery said they want Fales to develop into a backup, maybe some stability at that position, which the Bears haven't had in a long time.
No question about it. And Phil Emery will draw some attention for the comments he made a week ago about what you can get in a quarterback in the late rounds of the draft. But people need to read very clearly into exactly what he said. And essentially what he said is you don't go looking in rounds 4 or below for a long-term starter.
Starter being the key word.
The key word. Yeah. They have their long-term starter here. His name is Jay Cutler. We've talked about it many times. He's signed through the 2020 season. So they're not in the market for another starter right now. They're in the market for competition for a backup role. I'm okay with the pick. I'm okay with the logic. You've got Jordan Palmer, you have Gerard Johnson, and now you've got another guy to add to the competition in the mix. And we talked about it several times throughout this process. You can take 4 quarterbacks through the OTAs, through minicamp, into training camp, and get a look at a lot of different guys. And Mark Trestman now gets a guy that he can take from day 1 of his NFL career, introduced to his system, and bring along with some continuity.
Right. I think the argument is that the Bears could have signed an undrafted free agent or a veteran free agent to fill that backup role if they weren't comfortable with Jordan Palmer or Jared Johnson. But as Mark Trestman told us this evening, there's something to being able to get a rookie in with that you think has some talent and really build on that. He cited Aaron Rodgers' situation up the road in Green Bay, and while that's not exactly a great comparison because Rodgers was drafted in the 1st round and has superior physical tools, the idea of having a quarterback in a system over a long period of time and being able to grow in that system is evident, and that's the comparison he's drawing.
And let's be very clear, because I've seen headlines popping up across the national platform that Phil Emery has contradicted himself by selecting a quarterback after what he said. He is not.
I agree.
You have to read deeply into what he said a week earlier to understand exactly what he was meaning, and the Bears will look at David Fales there. Now, the other pick in the 6th round, that's another one that will be a head scratcher to some. The Bears take a punter. It was the guy that the Bears had rated as the top punter in this draft. I don't have a problem with drafting a punter, but when you do, you better make sure he's a long-term answer, a guy that's going to be around 5, 6, 7, 8 years as the guy at that position if you're going to use that investment, particularly when you have other needs in the secondary at linebacker, et cetera.
Yeah, Pat O'Donnell was the only punter taken in this draft, so of course you'd have to wonder, could the Bears have gotten him in the 7th round, or could they have gotten him as an undrafted free agent? We'll never know, and that's the thing. When the Bears target players, target positions like they did with Brock Vereen and Kadeem Carey and the defensive tackles on Friday night, I don't have a problem with targeting a guy, but you better be right. And that's the thing. So the Bears have to evaluate these guys properly, and ultimately the draft record is going to play out over time.
What you have to understand in a draft, and I think that people who play fantasy football can relate to this in some regards, if there's a player you want and he's available around the area where you feel comfortable taking him, take him. Because if you don't get that other chance, you're going to be kicking yourself if a guy you wanted comes off the board. They obviously liked Pat O'Donnell. They had a need at punter after cutting Adam Pavlich, so they took him. Now we'll see how he pans out as he gets into, obviously, the competition in the offseason. And then, most likely, will be your opening day starter.
Right, and the Bears stayed busy even after the draft concluded. They are signing Northern Illinois quarterback and Heisman Trophy finalist Jordan Lynch. Judging from Phil Emery's comments, they like him as a running back, possibly. We'll be able to tell a little bit more as we get into next weekend and Friday's 3-day rookie minicamp.
It's going to be fun to get a look at, obviously, a hometown kid who seemed very excited to be joining the hometown team with the Bears, sent out a tweet immediately after agreeing to join the Bears. And obviously, Jordan Lynch brings a lot of different things to the table. Nobody sees him as a long-term quarterback, so what kind of things can the Bears fiddle with to find something and just experiment with him and see if he's got a place on the 53 or even on a practice squad.
Right, and we finally have some players here to break down. And even though the draft is over, our coverage at Chicago Tribune will keep going all this week and, like we said, all the way through next weekend's 3-day rookie minicamp. All right, for Dan Wiederer, I'm Rich Campbell. That'll do it for Bear Download.